Good afternoon. My name is Pam Lanhart, and I just want to welcome you to a session of the Family RX that I know beyond a doubt is just going to be wonderful and amazing. I'm so excited to have with me today Donna Spakes, and Donna is a mom who is in recovery in every sense of the word. I have been so impressed. Donna started kind of working her own recovery program and adopting this way of being with her son that was really touching to me. And so I asked Donna to come on and share her story today. And I'm not going to tell her story for her, but I really, I'm so excited. And Donna, thank you so much for being willing to join us here and share some of your story and how really this way of being and love, compassion, empathy, all of those things changed your family. And we're happy to say your son is now in recovery, right? So
That's correct.
yeah. So obviously Donna's not from Minnesota. Tell me a little bit about you first, Donna.
Okay. As you said, I am the mother of someone who's recovering from substance abuse use disorder, and I'm a mother of 3 adult children. They're all in their late 20s and 30s, and I'm a grandma to 4. I'm a wife, and I work full time, and I'm just blessed to be here. And I want to say that I really appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk to everyone about my journey with my son.
Yeah. And the really neat thing is it wasn't the journey with just your son. We really believe that families recover together, right? And so
Yeah.
part of why I wanted to share this because I do remember a few of those original phone calls and some of those original Facebook messages and just
Complete
knowing
panic.
knowing how far you've come from that, I thought your story just had to be told because it was such a remarkable transformation and you got this really quick. And I think because you got it really quick, it's where your family is today and why your family is where it is today. So maybe we can start with a little bit about your journey with your son. You know, if you don't mind telling us his name.
Sure. His name is Larry.
And when did things start and what kind of how did how did you understand that he had substance use issues and I know that he ended up at your house a while back. Just catch us up to that point maybe.
Okay, sure. Well, when my son was 15, he asked if he could go live with his dad. There had been a lot of issues and violence between the 2 of us, and that is how we came to get a divorce in the first place. So he lived entirely with me with a few visits in between from the age of 6 to 15. And during that time, I became convinced that my ex-husband was doing really well. He was remarried and had another child, and my 15-year-old Larry really wanted to go and see what it was like to live with his dad. And after a lot of consideration, I finally allowed that to happen. And I thought things were probably going pretty well until at the beginning of summer, when he was 17, he had a car accident. And I got the call at work and was told that he was in the emergency room and that he was alive, but I needed to get there quickly. And I live in Arkansas. He was living in Branson, Missouri. So I made a very, very quick trip to the hospital to check on him. He ended up spending several days in the hospital. He was pretty broken up, bones broken around his eye, hip, ankle, toe. He was just really in bad shape, and had to have some surgeries. And while he was there, he was on a morphine drip, which kind of alarmed me at first, but they assured me that he needed that. And so that continued. When he went home from the hospital, I took him to his grandparents, who also lived in Branson, so that they could help his dad care for him. And they prescribed OxyContin. So I remember asking the nurses and the doctors if this was safe, if it was habit forming, if maybe there was something else they could give him. And I was told it was completely safe, not habit forming at all. He would only get a few pills and get better, and we would all move on down the road. I had no idea that that this was a firestorm that had gotten started in his life. He managed to keep it very well hidden from everyone, including his wife, for a while. He got married when he was 18, and he moved to West Virginia. And so I got a call in early 2007 from his wife, and she told me that he was addicted to Oxy, and that he had been buying it and abusing it, and he was in bad shape, and that he needed to go to recovery. I just remember being heartsick because I had never dreamed that something like this would happen. And it just felt surreal because he was such a good kid. I mean, I just thought, how can my good kid be doing this bad thing? And so, long story short, he went to treatment in Branson, Missouri, and he ended up from West Virginia to Branson because his dad lived there. He was an alcoholic and had friends in recovery, and so they got him into this recovery home. He first went to detox, and then, of course, to recovery, and he stayed for a year, which was a blessing. And I'll forever be grateful for that first time. When he got out, he went home, and things seemed really good, and he seemed to be doing really well. And from what I understand now, for the most part, he was clean of substance use, clear of substance use, until 2012, and it became unmanageable for him again. He had started using again, and it was to the point that he was not able to work. And his wife ended up taking him back to Branson because that is the only recovery method he was willing to hear, and which was fine because we know that he had good success there before, and we didn't feel like that was all for nothing. We felt like, okay, we've got to get back in there. He needs to go back and get back in, in the game of recovery. But he only stayed for 5 months, and then he went home because he felt like he already knew everything, and there was nothing left for them to teach him. He just needed to get his head clear, get healthy again, and go back home and do right. And for the most part, again, he did do really well until he didn't again. And the reoccurring thing here, the theme is that there's this disconnect from leaving recovery and going home, there was no aftercare. He didn't get or stay. There were reasons behind it, but he did not stay connected to recovery in West Virginia, and wasn't working any kind of a program. So in 2017, now we're almost to here, I got another phone call from his wife that she needed help, that he was using drugs again, but it was not oxy this time, that he was using meth, and that it was really bad. It had taken its toll on him physically, and she was worried that he was going to die because he had lost so much weight and was just not functioning. So there was a lot of I keep saying the word dysfunction, but that's just what it was. She was
Suffering.
she was angry, she was resentful, and she wanted help, and I didn't know what to give her. I was empty. I didn't know what to do, and I didn't feel like I could help her. So there was now there's this disconnect for me and her, because we could no longer get along and talk about this and work together on it. I had began, I just can't even tell you how brokenhearted I was this time around. I felt like I had failed my daughter-in-law. I had failed my son. I had failed his kids. I couldn't work. I couldn't eat. I could not be a wife. I couldn't be a grandma. I started not getting the grandkids. I just wanted to sleep. I just wanted to stay in bed and not get up. And it kind of gotten to the point of my husband coming in, and he said, "Are you going to stay up here all day?" And I said, "Yes, because I can't face the world while my son is dying." And so he said, "If you don't get some help, if you don't do something, I am taking you to the hospital, because I'm not going to let you go down. I'm not going to let you go down too." So I knew I had to do something, and I hit my knees in prayer that day. And I am a religious person, and so I prayed, and I just said, "God, please, please let me find out something." And I spent some quiet time, and after I cried my heart out, I pulled open Facebook and the internet, and I searched for moms and dealing with an adult child that is addicted to substance. And that is how I found out about Thrive, and that is how I found out about Pam Linhart, who has been an absolute blessing to me. It was probably 2 or 3 months later that I finally reached out to her and asked her about Thrive, and I got connected. And this is when my recovery started. My recovery started when I decided that I couldn't let my whole family down, and I needed to get healthy myself, or I was not going to be able to help my son. And so that is the journey that got me to Thrive.
Now, and then at that point, you didn't really know that Larry was going to end up back at your house, right? So
That's correct.
this is all such incredible timing. So you reach
Yes.
out, you start doing some searching, and you find our Thrive group, and And obviously we really talk about a different way of being with our loved ones, and that resonated with you, and you start working on yourself, and all of a sudden something happens and Larry ends up back at your house. So you were now suddenly immersed in having to practice what you were trying to learn.
I couldn't have said it better. That is exactly what happened. It was such incredible timing because you're right, I had no idea I was going to have this opportunity with him. And so I was working on my own recovery. In the meantime, I was getting some bad information. I feel like was bad information now, having learned what I have in the process. I was hearing tough love, and he has to hit rock bottom, and he has to make all these decisions himself. You can't do anything about it. You're out of control. You didn't cause it. You didn't cure it. You can't control it. All of the catchphrases that kind of got me to where I fell apart to begin with. And I just started trying to shove those to the back of my mind and really immerse myself in and Thrive, and which is a family recovery group. And I remember one of the first things that I read on the Facebook group that really stuck out to me, and that was that you could have joy. And that really intrigued me because up until then, I had felt like if I was happy, if I did experience some joy, what kind of mother was I that I could just carry on my life and be happy knowing that my son was going through all of this? And then I realized that that's not quite the way it is. It's you have joy through it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not shoving him to the side at all. It was becoming more healthy and learning how to have joy myself so that I could model that joy for him. So you asked how he got to my house. I made probably 5 or 6 trips from July to December to West Virginia to check on him, which if you look on a map, you'll realize that's about a 14-hour drive by the time you make stops for gas and so forth. And so I just kept going to him and saying, I'm here and I love you and I'm here to support recovery. You choose where you go. I will take you. I will help you. You want to go to this part of the country or whatever. I'm just here for you. But he wouldn't hear of it, didn't want it, said he had had enough of that. It didn't work before. And here he was losing his family. He had already lost his job. Was almost about to lose his house, everything. And he was really, really down. But I couldn't physically make him, of course. So I just kept telling him, I'm here for you and I love you no matter what. You give me a call any time of the day or night, I'll be here. And then I got a phone call first week of January. I was on my way to do some shopping and phone rang and it was him. And he said, Mom, what are you doing? And I said, I am running in to do some shopping. And he said, and he just folded and said, I need help. I'm ready. Can you come get me? Nobody else will talk to me. I've begged people to take me. Nobody will even answer the phone now. You're all I've got. Can you please come get me? So I was on the road in about 30 minutes. Fastest packing I've ever done in my life. And I went to get him, showed up at 4 o'clock in the morning. And if you have a loved one who is in addiction with and using meth, then you probably would have seen the sight that I saw. The house was in total disarray, and he had everything he owned by the front door: tools, clothes, food, like he was never going to get to eat again. It was chaos. But when someone says they are going to recovery, you just jump in and go. So I got everything in there that I possibly could, and then we were on the road. So I took him back to the recovery house that he went to the 2 times previously, because that is, again, where he chose to be. And he was there for 5 months before he said he had, again, learned everything that he had learned before. There was nothing new, and he was stronger now, and he was ready to go back. I told him that I wouldn't come pick him up because I didn't support that. I only supported recovery, and coming or going back home at that point was just not something I could support. So he got someone else to get him. And I'm going to just kind of skip right forward. He went home, and his brother was doing some storm damage relief work in Florida. He lives in Little Rock, Arkansas, but he was doing some storm damage relief work in Florida. And he called him and asked him if he still wasn't working, and he wasn't. And he said, "Would you like to come work with me for a while?" So they did. And when they finished, that's how he got back to Arkansas. Things went really good with his brother for a couple of weeks until the some of the behaviors from abusive or use of meth began to show up, and my son was to the end of what he could deal with. And so I asked him to come stay with me for a couple of weeks, and the 2 weeks turned into 3 months. So that's how he came to stay with me. And I feel so incredibly blessed that I had been in the year previous getting an education on recovery and learning how to better help him, because this whole time since he was 15 years old, he had not lived in my home, and I had not had daily access to him. And I dreamed of having him for even 2 weeks before, so I could just love on him and be his mom. But that's not what happened. I wasn't there just to be his mom. I had this incredible opportunity to show him unconditional love and peace, the peace that we have in our home. And so that's how he came to be with me.
Yeah. I love that, the peace. And you stayed pretty well in that place of peace while Larry was there. And so
That's right.
Larry's now in your home. And in the meantime, you've been leading a group, a support group in your area, which again, the timing is so interesting here. And so, there were some bumps in that road. And I know there were some bumps between you and Larry, and then also between you and your husband. And so, what did some of those interactions with Larry look like at that time? You talk about loving him unconditionally and supporting his recovery. And because I know part of the story, I know that there were times when that was not easy for you.
No. Okay, so early on, when I asked him to stay with me for a couple of weeks, I had already talked to my husband and told him that I wanted to ask him to come stay for a little while, and make sure that we were on the same page with that. And he was very, very supportive of us walking this out with him. And he knew that it might be more than 2 weeks, and we would just see how it goes. And I'll tell you that at first, when he got here, he was really unhealthy. He was probably about 40 pounds less. Well, I'll just tell you, he's a little guy. He's probably 5'7", and normally he would weigh around 175 pounds. And he weighed about 130 when he got to my house. And he was very depressed, incoherent at times. And I just loved him up, made him comfortable in one of our bedrooms, and just told him that he could rest. And Pam, as you know, he was in bed for about a week, crying, just sobbing over life choices, his health, his teeth, losing teeth, mouth hurting. Most of our moms are familiar with meth mouth, and that was going on. His stomach hurt all the time. He needed money, and he needed to feed the disease. He needed drugs to do that. And so he was just physically ill. He was sorrowful about his family. And so it was really, really trying there for a while, because he stayed in bed. He would rarely come out. If he did, it was to eat something small, get something to drink, take his dog out. Sometimes he didn't have the strength to do that. So we were having to help with his dog and get his dog out, and feed her. And so he was just not doing well. And then at one point, I remember sitting on the side of the bed, and he began to cry, and he said, "Mom, it hurts for you to even sit here." He was just having these incredible body aches. And I just held him, and I told him that I love him. I love you whether you are using drugs. I love you whether you're clear of drugs. I loved you when you were born. I will love you forever. And nothing you've done, nothing you will do, nothing will ever stop that. But what I really want you to start thinking about is what you can do to move forward. And he had such a hard time hearing that. He didn't want to hear about the future. He couldn't see a future. He couldn't see life past his pain. And so I told him, we only have 2 rules. Our boundaries for you staying in our home are, and I left it open on purpose. The number one thing is you cannot use substances on our property or in our home. And he, of course, said, "Oh, I haven't used in a long time. I'm not using, Mom. I'm just hurting so bad because I'm just so miserable." And I said, "Well, I just want you to know that I know, and I love you anyway, and we're going to help you, but you have to move forward for recovery." So our 2 boundaries are no substance use on our property, no substance use on our home, none. And the other thing was, you have to move forward. I have to see that you're moving forward, whatever that entails. And I knew at the time moving forward for him was showering and, getting out of bed and eating a meal with us, and maybe taking his own dog out, to the bathroom and feeding his own dog. And then the next week it was, okay, now you need to get up and you need to help us do something, around the house. And that's when he kind of got out of the house more. because he realized we were expecting something of him, and he got a little stronger physically. And he started going into our shop. And that is where the problems, the strife between us started, because he would go out to our shop and he did not want us to come out there. He did not want us to come see what he was doing. He had all kinds of crazy, I call them crazy. I don't mean to be disrespectful, but they were just these ideas that he had, that he was going to build all these things. If he was his self and drug free, I could see him completing all these things. But it was crazy to me because I knew that he was under the influence of drugs, and I knew that he couldn't get those things accomplished because he could barely function. So in the process, he caught his truck on fire by our house while we had company. Was able to get that extinguished, and then now his vehicle doesn't run. He had our shop completely full of all these unfinished projects, one after the other. And so we kind of, we came to a head on that, because I told him that he had to get it cleaned up, that we had given him enough time, and that it was time for him to get these projects cleaned up, and he needed to start looking for a job, like a 9-to-5 job, something, you know. So we really got into a huge fight that day, and I called Pam and I said, I'm at a loss. In my entire life, I had never once had a fight with this boy. He was always the sweetest, the most respectful, loving person, but he was so angry that I thought he was going to hurt me. And so I got out of the shop and went and called. And one of the things that she shared with me was, first of all, to pray about that, and to pause. You know, whenever you see that, you know, you're making a request of him and he doesn't want to comply, to remember that anger and the fight is what he needs to feed the disease. If he's angry, then he's got a right to use. Then, you know, he's going to push to get out and go get something else. So to learn to pause with that, and have another go at the conversation. So as hard as it was, because I'm one of those people who I want to get in there and I want to solve it, and I want to talk this out, and I want to come to the bottom of it and come to a conclusion, meeting of the minds and all of that. He wasn't going to hear it. And I realized that's what I was doing. I was pushing. And so I paused and I went for a drive, because I myself was so sad and so angry that I didn't think I could be in my house and not go talk to him. So I went for a drive. And when I came back, I went into the house and I thought, okay, I've got to just let this sit for a little while longer. But he came in the house, and he came in and he hugged me and he told me, you know, I'm just so sorry. I just let that get totally out of control, but I just feel, I feel so sick, and I have all these things I want to do, and I can see it in my head, and I know how to do it, but my hands don't do what my head's telling it to do. And I'm just so ashamed and just so embarrassed that I can't do what I'm really good at. So that allowed us to heal, to have that conversation, and to learn that not to push, and to give ourselves time um, to calm down.
Mhm. Wow. Yeah. So tell me, because we kind of talked about you, and I love that you shared that you realized that you didn't want to contribute to the chaos because that would contribute to the use. Now, did you ever get resistance? Because I know your husband isn't Larry's dad.
That's correct.
Um, and so tell me about what that looked like. And because you're all in, right? You figured this out and you're like, I just want to love him. And I love what you said. You basically fed him and watered him and loved on him. Like you just, kind of brought him back into this really safe space in your home. And you continue to make it safe. Um, so what was that like between you and your hubby? And then, and for the sake of time, then how did he end up leaving? So tell me first
Okay.
about that resistance, because I know that it was difficult at times.
Oh, sure. Okay, so at probably the 2-month mark, my husband came to me and he said, I know that you're doing everything that you can, but I don't see that things are getting better. He needs to go to recovery, and I think that he needs to go. And if you need my help, I'll help you with that, because it's clear to me that he needs to go to recovery. And so I just told him that I totally understood. He had every right to feel that way and every right to want peace in the house and to have his shop back and to have the house, that we made together back. But I felt like I was really close to being able to get him to be open to some path to recovery.
Mhm.
It became apparent that some of the things that I had asked him, if he had considered, he was ready to shoot down every possibility that I had brought up. And I just felt like I needed some more time. And we have a great relationship, and he trusted me, and I'm very thankful for that. And he said, I understand, and I'm going to give you some more time, but there will come a day that I really feel like I'm going to have to get involved. And so I just I try not to let that deter me, and I just went right back into what I was doing. The other pushback I had was sibling pushback. Um, Before Larry left his brother's home, they had a disagreement over some money, and this caused a lot of resentment from his brother. And he suggested that I just pack him up and send him home. He said, this is not right. This is killing you. I can see it. I've seen what it's done to you. And if he chooses this, then he chooses this. But, we need you. Grandchildren want to see you. And I don't feel good about, my son being there when he's obviously still using. And so I had to have a discussion with him um, about having some patience and letting me work through this with him a little while longer, and to try to understand that I could not give up on him, and that I would never give up on him either.
Mhm.
I moved forward with that, and we continued to, and I am giving or using my home and opening it up for a Thrive group meeting. And so also Larry is seeing these classes. He sees that I'm working my recovery, and he sees this change in me, because now he's beginning to come out of the fog. He's still using, but he's not using as heavily, and so he's beginning to come out of the fog a little, and he sees that I'm using some different terminology than he had heard from me before. And just one of the things that I told him that he seemed to really latch onto is that I was not going to give up, and that I saw him as my son. I saw him as a whole person um, that was just buried in this drug addiction, and I could see a future for him, and I could see happiness, and I could see joy in the future, and I was not going to give up until he could see that too.
Mm.
Um, it was just a process. I guess the one thing I really want people to understand is, as with most of the parents that I've talked to, their kids by this point, they've been in drug use for years and years. And it's not something that you learn how to deal with, and you can say some magic words and then they are just ready to pick up and move on. um, it took a lot of patience and diligence to just keep loving, keep setting those boundaries, keep reminding them of the boundaries. There were things that I repeated to him, like, you have to get up. You cannot lay here all day. You have to get up and you have to go. And he didn't take it easily. It was, he was not happy. But the more he did it, the easier it got. And so it finally got to the point that I felt like I could feel the pressure from my husband. I knew that he was ready. And so I felt like it was time. I had set that boundary that you cannot use on our property. But the truth is, I knew he was. I knew he was. I knew he was doing it the whole time. I just hadn't caught him. So I went to bed one night and I just felt it. I knew that he was using, and it was time. It was time for me to step up and let him know that I knew. And so I went downstairs, went out to my shop, and I caught him using meth right there in my garage or my shop. And he was shocked. He was mad. He tried to deny it. I didn't see what I saw. And I just went over and I just held him. And I said, son, I told you before that I love you, whether you are or whether you're not. But this was a boundary you could not cross, or you had to leave my home. And he said, I understand. I understand. I'm sorry. And so we had a long, long talk, and we got no sleep that night. But we talked about what can you do to move yourself forward. If you don't want to go to recovery, how are you going to handle this? How are you going to how are you going to stop using? Because you've made it clear that you want your family back, you want your kids back, you want your job back, you want your life back. But this is not how you do it. And so I'm here to help you. You tell me, what does it look like for you? What does it look like for you in the future? And he just stared at me. He said, I don't know. I don't know. And I said, well, if you say you want to go home, what would it look like if you went home now? I don't know. So I seemed to be asking a lot of questions, and I didn't get a lot of answers, but I just held faith that he was listening. And so we picked it up the next day. And I just asked him again, what do you see? Because you need to move forward with your recovery. You know, they're online, there is, there's Youth Challenge, there are a lot of Christian recovery groups around here. There's West Virginia, there's South Carolina, there's all these choices. And he finally, he just couldn't talk about it anymore. And he went outside. And when he came back in, he said, I thought about what you said. Nobody's ever asked me, what does it look like? That's just seemed like an odd question to me. But I do know what it would look like if I went home now. I would go back home. My wife's going to know that I'm still using, and she's going to divorce me, and I'm going to lose my family for good. I'm not going to be able to get a job because I'm not going to be able to pass a drug test. So I don't want to go back. I don't want to go to recovery, but I'm willing to do that. But I want to think about it, and I want to think about the choices that I have before me. And so, that's something that he hadn't been willing to talk about since he left in May of 18, and it's now April of 2019. So that alone tells me that what's going on in my home is working. It is helping him. Um, you know, over the next couple of weeks.
Before you move on, you shared something with me on that phone call a while back, and it was so profound. Do you remember what you said?
Yes, after he went home. So he went home. At this point, he did pack up and he did go home, and but he went home with the commitment that I'm just going to go see my kids, and then I'm going to go to recovery, um, which I'll say he did not go to recovery, but he did go home, and he was homeless for a while. He was homeless. He lived in his truck. He was broke. He had nothing. Um, and then something just clicked with him. And when he left, you see, because the last meth that he took into his body was here at my home the night that I caught him. And so he goes home and he has nothing, and no one will talk to him, and he can't get a job, and all these it was tough. It was tough. But over the next 3 months, he was able to get strong. He was able to gain weight. He was able to apply for jobs. He passed 2 different drug tests, was offered 2 different jobs. His wife accepted him back home, and they're working on it. Things are not perfect, but they're working on it, and they're parenting their kids. And so he's got another opportunity to live this out this time. And so now he's about 3 months into this, and he calls me, and it just out of the blue. It was at a time that I wasn't expecting, because he did normally try to check in with me before he would go to work. And he said, "Mom, are you busy?" And of course, my mind goes right back to the day that he said, "Mom, are you busy? I need to go to recovery." So I'm thinking this is what, but he said, "I just want to tell you and Sean, my husband, how grateful I am for how you took me into your home and you loved me unconditionally. I have never felt so much peace and so much acceptance for just who I am not what you wish I was, what you wanted me to be, what you wanted me to do with my life. Um, just no expectations other than you just truly cared about me. You you wanted me to see that I could have a life, and y'all saw that I had a future that I couldn't see for myself. And when you said that you loved me whether I was using or whether I wasn't, that you love me no matter what, I didn't understand then what you were saying, but I now know that you knew the whole time. You knew I was using, didn't you? And I was, yes, I did. But I needed I needed to set that boundary, but I needed to give you time because I knew that you needed to get well. And it just took time to heal and to get your strength back. And he said, well, that made a huge difference for me. That made all the difference for me. And he said, with everything that you went through with your group that you were a member of, I can tell that it worked because you were not handling it well. And I could see a change in you. And with me not having to worry about you, and I'm not fighting with you, and there's no strife between the two of us, that allowed me the freedom to really think about me and work on my recovery and see how I could heal. And that kept me from wanting to use, because in the past there was always so much fighting, and I fed off of that. The disease needs it feeds off of that. And so you took away every reason I had to fight, albeit it took 3 months to get there. But you see, it didn't happen overnight. It took a while for him to catch up and to see what was going on. But he says that it made all the difference for him and his ability to go back home and now live out what he knew to do all the while. Now, I don't know what the future holds, and I don't know that he'll never use again. But I do know that the line of communication is open between he and I, and he knows he can call me, and there's no judgment, and there's no shame, and that I'm going to take him right where he is, and I'm going to help him get help.
Wow. I think that's a great way to end this, Donna. I just want to thank you again. Your story is so powerful, and there were so many pieces of this that I was able to pick up on, and just loving him radically where he was at, being patient, working on your own recovery, educating yourself, getting rid of languaging that was shaming. I heard that in there. That was a big part of it. And then painting a picture. When he came, my guess is he didn't see a way out. And what you did was you showed him the way out. You said there is a way out. And it was the first time anyone had ever said, you can do this, and you can, you don't have to lose your family, and there's a pathway to freedom. And so, and then this was the biggest thing I picked up, and we're with you. We are with you on that journey. Like, it's not your journey, it's our journey.
It is our journey, and he knows he's not alone now. That's one thing I found out, that I was not alone, and now he knows that he's not alone in this.
Well, I appreciate you so much, Donna. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And I know that it's going to be an encouragement to so many people who listen to this. And again, just thank you for joining us.
Thank